It's more than ironic that I should be greeted by classical music, because in one chapter of the book I talk about my addiction to classical music. Actually, anything can become addictive. It's not the behavior, it's your internal relationship to it.
The first time that I had a proper drink was I was 11. I stole alcohol from my parents and I got drunk with my cousin. I actually had a diary, and I read the diary later, and I had written that I was sick and that I felt awful and I couldn't wait to do it again. That to me sums it up, is that it didn't matter about the consequences.
An addiction is any behavior that one persists in and relapses into despite negative consequences, where there's a craving involved. Whether you're addicted to work, status, power, sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol, the addiction process in the brain is exactly the same.
Food, shopping, smoking.
30% of Canadians now define themselves as workaholics. But what's the negative impact when you try and fulfill your emptiness through the work? You lose intimacy in your life, you lose contact with your family, you're not present for your kids in the emotional sense, and you isolate yourself. So there's plenty of negative consequences. All addictions do. Substance addiction of the kind that my patients suffer from is at the extreme end of a continuum on which most human beings belong. To my work addiction, I can also add my addiction to classical compact discs. It's not about liking the music. You can love the music and not be addicted to purchasing it. When I'm engaged in my addictive cycles, I lie about it to my wife. And I'll hide this stuff on the porch till she goes to sleep, and then I smuggle it into the house. The core of the addiction is that same sense of deficient emptiness, that when it's just not enough without that external.
I think the first time was when I was 16 at a wedding in Winnipeg, and I way overdid it and ended up in a screaming fest in the backyard with my cousins, and I knew right away that it hit me differently than other people. I definitely wanted to repeat the experience.
Early childhood abuse shapes the brain in such a way as to make you prone to be addicted. On the downtown east side, I don't have a single female patient who wasn't sexually abused as a child.
I think part of it is, for me, abuse as a child that may have triggered a genetic disposition.
A significant aspect of what's necessary for childhood healthy brain development is the quality of what's called attunement. When the parents are stressed by their own unresolved emotional stuff, or they're workaholics, those brain circuits don't develop appropriately.
I was raised by my grandmother, and I found out in a kind of really awful way, and that my grandmother was my grandmother and not my mother, and I thought she was. And it was the beginning of trauma for me, to realize that I had a white mother that I'd never met. I remember my troubles starting from about that age in my life, where I just stopped listening. I became a rebel.
Addictions are shaped by many influences: social, political and economic status, personal and family history, physiological and genetic predispositions. But the core of all addictions, there lies a spiritual void.
I call it the inner spiritual loss of self. There can be people that are raised in good families. If they have this melody, life doesn't go in you.
I always had a sense of not feeling a part of. I don't think that that's true. I think I was totally a part of. I came from a loving family, but for some reason I couldn't see that. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't receive it.
It's my contention that the people in the downtown east side, in fact just about anyone, is in the hungry ghost realm in order to escape the hell realm of unbearable emotion. If you look at the drugs of abuse, like heroin and morphine, they're painkillers, of course.
This deep underlying pain.
I get into so much emotional pain that I have to medicate myself, and it happens over and over again, and time, age, circumstance doesn't change that.
I had tried everything that I could think of to fix this emptiness, this pain inside of me.
As the Buddhist teacher said, just one more is the binding cycle, is the binding factor in the cycle of suffering. So I always think, okay, one more disc and my Beethoven collection will be complete. But half an hour later, I have to go back and get something else. 1 week, I spent $8,000 on discs. I actually left a woman in labor that I was responsible for in hospital to go get a disc. I had to have it right then and there. Well, that's addictive behavior.
Your mental power will not stop that behavior. And it's the mind telling you need this behavior. Whether you're throwing up food, whether you're stuffing the sixth chocolate bar in your mouth, it's the fact that you can't stop the behavior. You know it's killing you. You know it's killing you. You can't stop it.
In terms of my own addictive behaviors, the first thing to do was to get the impact. But that wasn't enough, because I'd known the impact for a long time. It's the second step, which is seeing a different possibility. And actually, it's in writing this book that I began to develop a sense of a different possibility. That actually, I'd be a happier and freer being if I wasn't controlled by this urge to acquire more stuff. And like the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, without those attachments, we're free.
The alcohol wasn't working anymore, it was making it worse. I didn't believe in God, but I just said, you know, if you're so effing powerful, get into my life right now and show me what to do.
I was pretty sure it was over for me. But my daughter stood by me, and she came and followed me around the downtown east side and tried to help me remember who I was. Finally, she got pregnant with my grandson, and that was my wake-up call. I had to come back to life.
I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I just knew that I needed help. I got the information about alcoholism and realized that that was me.
I want to live in a recovered state, and a recovered state is I practice spiritual principles so that my disease stays in remission. If I stop practicing spiritual principles, my disease, the 12-step program stops that process. You're choosing to do a new behavior because you have that spiritual connection which gives you the courage to do it, and as you do the new behavior, you feel differently about who you are. You become comfortable in your own skin, and you feel hope.
The onset of addiction was heavily tied to the onset of industrialization. In North America, the natives here had peyote, they had tobacco, they even had alcohol in some areas, but there's no mass addiction until they were severely dislocated by the European invasions.
Industrialization came and man could get substances to kill his pain. Then evolution is you just bore more of them.
The very dynamic of capitalism supports addiction both on a massive cultural level, but also on an individual level by dislocating people.
And that whole separation, some got it, some don't, has led to a massive spiritual malady.
The fact that we're so disconnected from nature, from each other, like the lacking in community.
And this is the age where as a planet we're bottoming out. And the fact that we don't really care about each other. We don't care if we're throwing away food here in mass tonnage and some little kid in another country doesn't have a bowl of rice and we act like we don't, it's got nothing to do with us. I believe the solution to this whole planet is to live in spirit. We all have humanness, but spirit lives in us. When we go to spirit, we become elevated, evolved, and whole. If we don't, we live with all the human stuff.
See, my contention is that we live in a highly addicted society. I mean, look, we say to the addict, how can you put something into your body that's going to kill you? What are we talking about? Look at the stuff we're putting into the environment that's killing us. We're addicted to the pleasures that we get from the lifestyle that's killing the earth. How is that different from the drug addict?